Now to Decision, Georgia. The machine recount of the state's presidential election is now underway in several counties. We're talking roughly 5 million ballots. Fulton County started its recount just a few hours ago after testing its equipment yesterday. President Donald Trump requesting the recount after certified results showed him losing the state to President-elect Joe Biden by more than 12,000 votes. Last week, election workers completed a hand retally of the votes as part of a statewide audit confirming Biden's lead. Fulton election officials say they're hoping to have all of the absentee by mail ballots counted by the end of today. The deadline to finish the recount is 11:59 p.m. next Wednesday.